Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'd like to show you how to make a quilt called Emmy. This is from the Quilt Factory. I've made a lot of their patterns. They're usually very fun to make. And I'm going to use fabrics that are similar to those shown on the pattern cover. But I'm going to use mostly these solid grunges, and I'm going to use this for the big print that's in the middle of each square. The pattern makes a 70 by 89 inch quilt. Let me take this out of here so you're not seeing a lot of glare there. And we need various amounts, 1 2/3, 3/4, 1/3, all the way on down here. So I'm going to cut those amounts off of my bolts and get them ironed up. Everything is ironed nice and flat, and I can't give you all the sizes of the subcuts because it's not my pattern, but Deb Grogan's patterns from the Quilt Factory, they're always very easy to follow. Everything is all cut out. And one thing I did before I'm moving on is I made a little chart with a little scrap of the fabrics, and I've got letters on them because all of these fabrics, they all have letters A through G. And that way I won't get confused, because when I start moving these things, sometimes I can't remember which color went where, especially since we've got all these grunges that are in similar colors. So you might want to make yourself a chart like this with your fabrics. The first thing we're going to make is some half square triangles, and we're going to do that. We're going to make 8 at a time. So we need to mark the back of these light squares. We're going to mark both diagonals. So I'm using a light pencil here from corner to corner, and then I'm also going to mark this diagonal. And I'll go ahead and do that with all these light squares. I'm going to put these right sides together. So blue, right side up, cream, right side down, and then stitch on both sides of the drawn line with a 1/4 inch seam. My foot is just shy of a 1/4 inch. So if I put my foot right along that line there, that's going to be about exactly the right size. Once you get to the end, you can just flip it around and do the other side. And do the same thing on this other diagonal line. Stitch on both sides. Once those are stitched, we need to cut them. The easiest way to do it is to put it on your cutting board, and I'm going to line it up with some lines that are on there. So it's right on those lines, and then we need to cut it across the middle both ways. It's pretty easy because it's 4 inches from this edge. So since I've got it lined up with these lines, I can put my ruler right there, cut it this way. Same thing going this way, and then cut it along those diagonal lines. So the idea is to not pick it up and move it, just leave it right where it is. Make these 4 cuts, and what we're going to get is 8 half square triangles all at the same time. It's very easy. The half square triangles need to be ironed open, so I like to put the light fabric down and then kind of peel this open and press it a little with your fingers. The idea is to keep that seam nice and straight. Add a little steam and it'll be very stable. I've gone ahead, sewn, cut, and ironed all of these blocks, and the next step is to trim them down a little bit. So I'm going to turn it this way so my diagonal is going like that, and I'm lining up on 2 lines on my board here. And we need to trim them to 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to move this over to 3.5, and it's only going to trim off a little teeny bit here. And then we want to trim off of the top edge. Now it is exactly 3.5 inches. That dog ear, the little piece here, that's cut off. The last step is to cut off that one last dog ear here. So we've got nice, neat, accurate squares. Once those are done, we're ready to work on flying geese blocks. We need these 2 patches here, and we need to mark the backside of all of these blue squares. This is the funniest looking patchwork that I ever work on. The method is just genius. I didn't come up with this method, but it works so well. All we have to do is line up these 2 squares in opposite corners, and that will make the drawn lines, they will all make one continuous line. You might want to pin this in the middle here so that nothing moves. And what we're going to do is stitch on both sides of the drawn line. So we're 1/4 inch away. Just go all the way down. Spin it around and down the other side. Next step is to cut right along the drawn line, and then we're going to get 2 funny shaped pieces that we're going to iron. All we have to do is press these away from the background. Give it a little steam. And we have almost a heart-shaped piece there. Bring those back to the machine, and we're going to add another square. Line this up along those edges there, and again stitch on both sides of that drawn line. Cut along that pencil line there. And then when we iron it, we're going to get 4 flying geese blocks. It's almost like magic. So these ones go this way. And then the other 2 have the piece on the opposite side. And these are exactly the right size. These do not need to be trimmed down at all. The only thing we have to do is take your scissors and cut off those little dog ears. And those 4 flying geese blocks are done all at the same time. Very easy and no waste. Once all the flying geese blocks are done, we're going to take these 2 strips over to the sewing machine. We're just going to make strip units with 1 light and 1 of the darks. So I like to put them right sides together and stitch 1/4 inch seam, and just try not to stretch either one. That will make your strip unit nice and flat. I always finger press my strip units when I'm here at the sewing machine because it's just much easier to do it here, and it makes it easy to iron. So I'm going to anchor it with my finger there, and then I'm holding the strips open with the palm of my thumbs there, and I'm drawing my finger right down there as I'm pulling it open. So then it'll be nice and flat, and it makes it super easy to iron it. It's very easy to iron them since we finger press them. I like to lay it out straight on my ironing board here and smooth it with my hand a little bit. And then I usually use a dry iron to make sure I've got everything flat, and then I add steam afterward. Next, we need to subcut these strip units, and you can do several at a time. I like to line up several 3 or 4 here, and I'm not even layering them, they're just one layer, but I can cut them all at once and it saves a lot of time that way. We need to make another strip unit with these same colors but wider pieces. Before we do the subcutting here, we're going to cut this in half. I'm just going to fold it so I can find the center. Then turn this one around and line up all the edges. The seam allowances are going in opposite directions here. And now we're going to subcut this, and then we'll take it to the machine, and the pieces that we need to make the next patchwork blocks will already be ready for us to sew. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We're going to cut this into a bunch of these units and we're going to stitch along here, but they're already right sides together, seams nested, and it's real easy to get those blocks sewn. All we have to do is make sure everything is still lined up and stitch this one seam. And now we have a nice, neat 4 block. Next, we need to make some more 4 patch units like this, but a little smaller, and they have more fabrics in them. We're going to take all 3 of these over to the sewing machine. All we have to do is take one of the light strips and stitch it to the dark gray. Then we'll take one of the light strips and stitch it to this blue gray. This is the same procedure we did before. We use a 1/4 inch seam and go all the way down one side, and then we will press the seam allowances toward the dark color. Here's how we're going to make the subcuts. We've got this one with the dark on the bottom, and then I'm going to flip this one over so they're right sides together with the dark on the top. And then we will cut them and they'll be lined up and ready for us to stitch together. All we have to do is make sure it's still matched up. Stitch that little seam. And we've got a nice 4 block there. We only have one more thing we need to do before we can put our patchwork blocks together. We need to put these on each of the 4 corners. The easiest way to put these on is to mark a little line across the back on the diagonal. Since it's dark, I'm going to use a white chalk pencil here. Just make a little line there. All you have to do is line this up on the edges and stitch right along the line. The square is honestly so small that even if you don't want to draw a line, let me show you. You can take a square and put it on the corner here, and you can just put this right where the needle starts, and you can just aim towards the other corner and it will be fine. It's so small, it's pretty easy to get that straight. Then we're going to iron these open. I'll finger press it right now and trim off those back 2 layers, and we'll have a little snowball block. To make the first block, we need the center, and then we need 4 of the flying geese, 4 of these little 4 patches, 4 of these strip units, and we need 12 of the half square triangles. And we'll take all that over to the sewing machine. One thing I noticed, I picked up the wrong squares to make my snowball block. I picked up these little small ones, and they're actually supposed to be the larger size on here. It's not that big a deal. It was very easy to fix. I just sewed the larger ones on top of the smaller ones I'd already put on there. But you can see there's little ones there, so all I'm going to do, open this up, and then the back layers will get cut, and it's actually going to cut off what I did wrong there. Now that corner is exactly correct. And all I wasted was 4 of these little guys, but when I did the cutting, I got quite a few extra anyway. So I didn't want you to be confused. Be sure you use these big blocks when you snowball your corners. Here's how the block gets laid out. In the middle, we've got the snowball block. Surrounding that, with the dark green up against it, are these strip units we made earlier. On top of each strip unit, we've got a flying geese block. Then to fill in all 4 corners, we've got the 4 patch blocks with the darkest piece facing towards the middle. And then we've got some blocks here that surround this. So let's see. That one goes like that. Let's put all 4 of those around here. Then each corner has these 2 guys pointing towards each other, just like that. That's the whole block. Now we're going to have to sew it in sections. What I would like to do is make this corner section, because this is actually the same here in each of the 4 corners. So let's sew this together first. We'll put these 2 pieces right sides together, stitch down here, and then stitch across. And I think we'll put our seam allowance this way on the top and this way on the bottom, and you'll be able to do the exact same seam allowance pressing on all 4 corners. Now when we stitch this, that middle seam is nesting. We match up these corners. And that part is done, so that's going to go like that. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch all 4 and get them ironed up before I move on. There's the 4th corner. The next step is to sew these 2 pieces together. And again, it's the same on all 4 sides, so we'll use exactly the same procedure. I like to put them right sides together. We're going to sew along here, but it's helpful if you stitch it from this side, because then we can make sure we're going right across that intersection, so we'll have a nice good point on our flying geese. We won't stitch off that point. This is the 4th unit here. For all of these seam allowances, they're going away from this point. They're going this direction right here. Now we've got 9 blocks. It's basically just a 9 block square that we're going to sew together. So I like to put them right sides together like this. We'll stitch down here and then we'll add these afterwards, but I'm going to slide them over a little bit so they're out of the way. The blocks are all done. I'm very happy with how they turned out because they're quite large. The layout's super easy. There's 4 blocks in each row and 3 blocks across this way. You can see it's going to make a nice big quilt. Between all these blocks, that's where we have some sashing. This print will go between all the blocks. And then there is the dark green, the same color we used here, for these little teeny cornerstones. So that's going to go between the blocks right where they all come together there. The last thing we need to add is 1 border of this same fabric that's on the sashing. It's going to go all the way around. Then we've got a small border of the background. That's going to go all the way around. And then there's a nice big border. This is the same fabric we used in the middle of our squares. And in the corner, in each of the 4 corners, show you what it's going to look like. Remember these little patchwork blocks we made, just 4 of them? These will go in all 4 corners. It's very easy to get everything stitched up from here. We just make rows that include the sashing. Sashing's exactly the right length. Sew those rows together, then we can get it loaded onto the quilting machine. The quilt is all loaded up and we need to pick a thread color. There's quite a few options that would look good on here. I'm actually considering using one of these darker colors. If you watch a lot of my videos, you know I generally like light colors. I like the thread to blend in. This will blend in. It'll show a little bit in the light, but I don't think it'll take anything away from it. This one also looks good. Going to show quite a bit. This is a little bit darker than the blue we're using, but when you put it on the blue, it blends in. That's the darkest option. This will blend better in the light. I suspect it won't show at all. There we go. Just a hint of color. It does look blue. And then we've got the nice light gray. Now that matches the fern batik that I've used. Goes in very well there. I actually think I am going to end up using the very light one this time. For the quilting pattern, I'm using this one called Fern Leaf Filler because my batik has all those ferns on it. Here's what it looks like with more repeats. It's got a lot of movement, very close quilting, and I think that will look good. The Emmy quilt is all done, and I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. The blue stars around that center, they really pop out. I'm really glad I used such a big contrast between this and the background. The fern batik that I used, it's very muted, but having it bordered in that dark green and then this going around the edges, that just looks really good. The one change I might do next time is I might use a different color cornerstone here so that it will show up a lot more. It does show in the corners quite nicely here. This is just a very small added step, but I think it really enhances the patchwork quite a bit. Now the back side, I used more of that fern because it's so calm, and this would look really good if you flipped the whole quilt over on your bed. If you wanted to have a different look for when the season changes, you could use this to cover the whole bed. Then you flip it back over and you've got this beautiful patchwork. Thank you so much for watching our video today. We hope you enjoyed it. I sure have a lot of fun making the videos. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer. Now at the end of every video, we like to do a giveaway. Today's giveaway is a quilt called Slice of Cake. This is a me and my sister's pattern, and we did a video to show you how to make one. If you want to make one, it really is a fun pattern to make. But today you can win it. So all you have to do is click the link below this video that says giveaway and put in your name and your email address, and you might be the lucky winner. Now if you like our videos and you want to support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That really helps us out. Happy quilting!